Please note that the content of this episode has explicit language and is not suitable for underage listeners. Hi, I'm CJ and I've done phone sex for 24 years. Let's get started. I'm back. I'm so sorry I was gone for so long, but life gets in the way and all sorts of stuff. But I'm here and I will try very hard to be consistent again, and it's good to be back behind the microphone. So I want to thank you for listening and continuing to listen. I really appreciate it very much. Thank you for listening to Secrets from a Phone Sex Queen, everything you always wanted to know about phone sex and more. Please reach out to me with your questions and comments at phonesexqueen1@gmail.com. And if you're listening on YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you are notified when a new podcast is dropped. Things have been interesting lately. Remember when I told you that people call with the same role plays over and over and over again? Just because I didn't do podcasts didn't mean I stopped doing my other things. I just couldn't find a time to do this, but here I am. So a couple of callers have actually changed things up a bit, which has been pretty interesting. So I'm always hesitant to start a call that's with a regular the same way because I never know where they want to go. Actually, I never know where any call wants to go, but with a regular, it's really hard. I do hope that after months and months and months that they would want things to change. Typically, they don't change anything, so it's routine and predictable for me. But as you know, it's it's not about me. It's about the caller. So for example, one of my callers has a thing for his niece. She's just over age, so she's young, but of the age limit, so that's fine. He has pictures of her clothed, he sent them to me, and he always calls with the same fantasy. The fantasy really is that he shouldn't be looking at her pictures, which is true, and thinking naughty thoughts, and that's about as far as we go. It's that, no, he can't do it. He shouldn't do it. He shouldn't be thinking these thoughts. And that's kind of where the role play or fantasy is, just us talking and eventually by me telling him that he's naughty. And after a while, he finishes. But he recently called and actually changed it up. And he started out by saying his nephew came over and brought his girlfriend. And he was liking her and having naughty thoughts about his nephew's girlfriend and what he might want to do to her or what his nephew is doing to her. So that was really nice and a surprising change. This has only happened once with the nephew, but now it's changed even more. And when we talk, it's about me and him. So now it's about me and him, which is great. But at the very end or close to the end, I bring up his niece's name and the photos and the girls in the pictures. And that gets him going and sets him off. So it's changed a bit and I like it, but I don't start off knowing where he wants to go. He kind of gets a little personal now and it's a breath of fresh air and a very nice change. And I think we both really enjoy that. I think the newness and the difference of it is very nice. The other one is I probably told you earlier on in my podcasts about a caller who he always wants me to be his stepmom. And after a while, he wanted me to tell him I loved him. And I'm always uncomfortable with that. Even as fake and phony as it is, I have to sound sincere, and it really kind of gets to me because I don't want anyone to think that I do love them. And it's happened before. Well, he changed it up as well, besides this other guy, and he called the other day and wanted me to be a neighbor. That was really different because it's always about his stepmom, and the neighbor was drunk, and it's always a drunk thing with him. But it was a nice change because I didn't have to tell him I loved him, and that was a really good thing because, like I said, I always feel really uncomfortable saying I love you. And the neighbor didn't have to do that, even though she was drunk. She was drunk and enjoying herself, so that was pretty good. I understand that people get stuck in their fantasies and their role plays. They know what they like. They know what will get them off. So why change it up? My thing is, why not change it up and do a little variance of what your fantasy is? You could always go back to your same old, but I think that there are people who watch different kinds of porn and they get off on different things depending upon your mood. And I think some of these people just get stuck in their rut of knowing what will get them off. And of course, they want to make it quick because it costs them money. And nowadays, things are so expensive, people have to really decide what they want to spend their money on. So that they know that if a phone call will take 6 minutes to get them off, then that's what they're going to do, regardless of whether it's the same thing every single time. And I can, I do it with my eyes closed. It's really simple because I typically don't say things differently each time. I try to come up with, a little bit of a nuance, something a little different, but it's hard to do that when it's the same role play every single time. So let's get back to the first call here that I mentioned about the guy and his niece. Well, so, I work on a platform, and I've told you that there have been on occasion where I would take someone off the platform or they would suggest it. And I think I mentioned that before. Someone will say they can't afford it or I want to talk to you offline, and I'll do it. I'm hesitant, but it's like a handful of people. So it's really not a lot. One day, this particular guy called me and he had gotten high on something that he had not done before. And he first called me and he said that it wasn't going to be a sexual call. And I'm like, okay. And it went on. And I believed him, which doesn't really matter. And we ended up talking for a very long time. And none of it was sexual. And he shared a lot of things with me. And I realized with him sharing, which I find to be very nice, he mentioned that he doesn't make a lot of money. And he didn't say it that way. It was where he worked and what he did. Some people would say, well, that's not your problem. And you're right. It's not my problem. But I have a friend who calls me the phone sex girl with a heart. And I do have one. When people choose to share things about their life with me, I listen and I take account of that. And I've told only a couple people, hey, if you email me before your call, I'll lower my rate. And nobody does, which is very nice. But I throw it out there and I say I will. And if I say I will, I will. No one's taking me up on that offer. Totally fine. This guy, after spending a couple $100 when he was high, that he obviously doesn't have, he slowed down just a little bit. And he gave me his number. And I wrote him and I said, we're going to have to talk about that. I thought he would call in a few days, but he immediately called me back. And I said, take this down. And I gave him my email address because I certainly wasn't going to write it out. I told him to email me and I said, look, we could talk offline. I'll save you some money. You pay me a certain way and that'll save you a bunch. Instead of charging you what I charge on the website, I'll charge you $1 a minute versus whatever it is I charge. So he said, okay. I said, I often don't want to charge for just talking, only the phone sex part of our conversation, because when I've taken people offline, it becomes more personal and they tell me more. I don't tell them much more because they don't ask, but they tell me about them. And he said, okay. And I said, I should be charging for my time, no matter if it's sexual or not. I think I'll probably do that, going forward, but I only charge for the phone sex part. And we've done that a few times. It seems to work. So I think going forward, that'll happen more. I'll charge him more for my time. Or I stay logged in and I said, hey, we could talk as long as you want, but I'm still logged in. And if we get interrupted, I hang up with you. I take my call. I call you back. I think he, like many men, have a fantasy about me and really like me. And that's very sweet. And I don't mind talking to him. I try not to lead anyone on. Hopefully that relationship will continue for a while. It dwindles, it ends, and you can't anticipate how long something like this will last. We'll see. I'm very careful about what I say. So now he's calling me every day or mostly every day on the platform. And sometimes he asks to be taken offline and sometimes he doesn't. He told me he thinks he's falling in love with me and that just hurts my heart. As sweet as it is, of course, it's not reciprocated. He's a nice person. I enjoy talking with him, but that's kind of where it ends. And I just know that this will end soon because I can't tell him I'm falling in love with you or that I really like you. It's sad. I've been through this before. It's not the first time. It's quite frustrating and upsetting to me, but we move on. I move on. And so since he just said it, I think he's going to think about it. He's a very thoughtful person, meaning not that he's thoughtful about me, but he's thoughtful and he thinks about things. So he may feel stupid or feel like he said something wrong. And I'm not going to discourage him, but I'm not going to encourage him. So we'll see how it goes. He's a nice person and deserves a lot, but I'm not who he thinks I am. I still have regulars who call with the same fantasy. For example, I had a caller, speaking of which, who I hadn't talked to for months and months and months, and he called me recently and said, it's been a while. And again, he's another one that has a niece who says annoys him. She's now 18, doing some things that the family doesn't approve of with an older gentleman, and this guy has a fantasy about her even after not talking to him for months. It could be even longer. It could be almost a year. It's been quite a while, yet calling me back with the same thing. I think that these people just have a certain fantasy that they get off to. They don't have any other fantasy that works for them. Like I said, as long as I'm here, I can help out. I would think that people would have a few go-to fantasies to choose from and not the same one over and over again. It's almost like watching the same movie over and over again. At some point, you are going to get sick of it and you're going to move on, but apparently not. Speaking of the same fantasy, my tiny penis man keeps coming back and calling me and keeps saying the same thing. He loves talking to beautiful women who make fun of him and his tiny penis. He can't get away from that, even if he tries. I told him there was a time where he wanted to stop with that fantasy, and he said yes, but he can't help it. He always needs to go back to it. He even goes to strip clubs and gives away his money to beautiful women so they can make fun of him. That's all he really cares about. And he says to me, whether it's true or not, it's going to get him in trouble financially, but he just doesn't care. And I said, well, how can I care if you don't care? And he wants me to make fun of him and laugh and tell him how strange he is and how small he is. And if I passed along his pictures to my girlfriends, and what do they think? And are they posting his picture on the internet so other people can see it and make fun of him? I tell him yes. And he asked me recently where my friends were posting his picture. And I said, honestly, I don't know. I never asked. But they told me that they would do it, and he accepts that. I've mentioned this before. I don't understand the whole I've got a tiny penis thing and how exciting it makes some men, but since I don't have one, how would I know how that feels? He wants to get arrested. He wants to be thrown in jail. It's the same thing over and over again, and I do believe it's true. This is what he wants. This is what makes him happy, and he knows that it's weird and wrong and strange, but he can't help himself. He's doing it anyway. There are many fantasies out there that I don't understand, but I don't have to. And when I tell my friends about them, they don't understand them either. But if we all told each other what our fantasies were, we'd look at each other in a different way, and it's nobody's business. It's all a matter of what we enjoy, what gives us pleasure, right? That's the important bit. Nobody needs to approve your fantasy, what gets you off, what gets you excited. It's really all about you. So just keep that in mind. If you have a fantasy that's weird or strange or not in the norm, you call me. If it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's really all about you. So keep that in mind. It doesn't matter how weird or whatever the case is. We are not, the phone women that you call, are not here to judge you. We are here to help you so that you can fantasize and live out your fantasy, and we can facilitate that for you. It may not be in real life with a partner, but I hope, and I've said this before, I hope for all of you that you find an open-minded partner who can play with you, and you can live out your fantasies with your partner without judgmental, someone looking at you with a side eye and judging you. It's hard to find that, but I truly believe that it can happen. I want to thank you for listening to Secrets from a Phone Sex Queen, everything you always want to know about phone sex and more. Please reach out to me with your questions and comments, whatever you have to say, at phonesexqueen1@gmail.com. New episodes will drop, I would say every Monday, but I can't commit to that right now. But I will try my best to do them as, weekly as possible, not week as in W-E-A-K, but week as in W-E-E-K. Check me out on Facebook at CJ's Podcast and Instagram at Phone Queen 1. If you're listening on YouTube, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new podcast is dropped. I am happy to be back. Until next time, stay sexy.